Coming up in today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we continue our first round predictive NFL mock draft with the first round just 2 days away. Plus, do we have a good understanding of what the Eagles could do with the 10th overall pick? All that and more on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Tuesday edition of the show. Monday through Friday, we're here with you on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers for listening to us all throughout the offseason. The NFL Draft just 2 days away. Gino and I will be going live an hour before the start of the first round. The Eagles picking at 10 and 30. On today's show, yesterday you heard picks 1 through 12 of our predictive first round mock draft. We are going to continue that with picks 13 through 31. The Eagles on the clock at 30 there. But Gino, before we get into that, there was a lot that happened in the NFL yesterday, right? Aaron Rodgers gets traded to the Jets. We know now that the Jets moved down from 13 to 15 with that pick swap being part of that blockbuster trade. Heard a lot of reports on NFL Network about what the Eagles could do, how perhaps other NFL teams are scared they could take Bijan Robinson, what that would do for the Eagles offense. There's rumors that they really like Paris Johnson, the tackle from Ohio State. One GM said they love Nolan Smith from Georgia. It's smokescreen season. It's lying season. But, Gino, some of those reports about who the Eagles like, I think it lines up with their philosophy, with their history, and I think we have a pretty good understanding, again, not of like what pick they're going to have and what prospect they're going to have, but what route that they're going to try to aim for and like what scenarios could play out.
Yeah, as much as we like to believe that we're Nostradamus, where we stopped yesterday's show at pick 12 right before that pick 13 and 15 got traded, that we can see into the future. Much like our friends over at FanDuel right now, they don't even have odds for the Eagles in terms of what position they are going to go with that first pick. They have about 22 teams, and the Eagles aren't one of them. And we like to believe we know where they're going to go. And if you look at those reports, Lou, I think it's pretty safe to say it's going to be the trenches, right? We heard Lucas Van Ness might not make it past the Eagles, and Paris Johnson they're in love with.
That's the report I hope isn't true, Van Ness.
Out of all of them, I think Paris Johnson, he can instantly come in right away, be your right guard, and then he could be your right tackle of the future, right? And Nolan Smith, you're betting on this high ceiling of this kid that is just freakish when it comes to athleticism.
Well, of course, Gino, too, there's the rumor that potentially I heard today that Howie Roseman might be looking into pick 6 through 8 to try to get Jalen Carter. So I think we agree that there's a few scenarios that could play out. Number one, I think they're going to absolutely explore the idea if Jalen Carter slips past Seattle at number 5. I think they will explore the idea of trying to trade up. Of course, the price has to be right. You're going to be competing with teams that might want to trade up for a quarterback, so you know the trade value compared to the charts. It's going to be higher if there's quarterbacks involved, but I think he'll explore that. And if not, I really do think it's between probably Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Nolan Smith, and then maybe Lucas Van Ness. I think you're right. It's going to be trenches, and then you just have to decide what spot they're at and which prospect it's at. But this is what the Eagles do, and I think that theme is going to continue despite all the Bijan Robinson hype lately.
Yeah, if you look over at FanDuel, I'm going to continue to reference them because Vegas has great insight. If you look at this morning, Will Levis goes from out of the category to be number 1 to being a close favorite.
Rising.
Could you imagine if Will Levis goes, Lou? My reaction will be crazy. But going to pick 10.
Live show Thursday, man, because this draft is so up in the air. The prospect pool, some people don't love it, so the boards are going to be different. And I think it's going to make for, you mentioned it before the show, a 2019 surprise night where you're like, oh my gosh, he went here, he went here.
That's what we need. That's what the Eagles need, frankly. And if you're looking at pick 10 over at FanDuel, the current top 5 favorites are Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson. Jalen Carter was 3rd. Now it's Nolan Smith, but Jalen Carter's there at 4, and Bijan Robinson at number 5. Right behind him is Lucas Van Ness. So if you're looking, 75% of those guys are trench players, right? That's what the Eagles do. And you want to get around the hype of Bijan Robinson. Maybe FanDuel's trying to play into the hype of that Eagles team taking him. And we have to address that yes, teams would be very scared of Philadelphia if they got this running back, right? 100%. I think fantasy players love this idea. But realistic team building, I believe Daniel Jeremiah or one of the reporters had a great quote. Like, the Eagles are trying to get a franchise pillar with that top 10 pick. Yeah. Or it was actually Tom Pelissero that said it when he was talking about it on NFL Network. Like, they view that pick as getting a franchise pillar, somebody that's going to be there for the long term. They don't pay running backs a second contract. That's not going to be a guy that you go there for the long term. But look at Lane Johnson, how many contracts they've given him, or Jason Kelsey. Jordan Mailata is going to get his third extension sooner rather than later. Yeah, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. They are willing to pay those guys because they know the assets they put in now, those first round picks in the top 10, are going to play out and just be that much better moving forward, because you never know if you're going to be up in the top 10. So you take a shot on this guy at a position that you continue to invest in, and you're not going away from what your paradigm drafting is. Like, don't go away from what has worked.
And there's got to be, Gino, a chance that the player can have a Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey like tenure with you, where he plays for a decade plus. Is that very hard to find? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, those are the pillar four of Philadelphia. That's dating back 13 years, and it's only four players, right? Dating back to Brandon Graham in 2010. But with a 10th overall pick, you have to at least have a chance that that player can be that guy, right? A Devontae Smith, who I think is going to be here with that kind of length and time. So with Bijan, yes, would he be elite right now? Would he probably make the biggest impact for the Eagles in 2023? Absolutely. Would he probably be elite for 5 years on that contract? For sure. And some people on Twitter arguing the draft, it's hard to find those guarantees, so take that when you can get it, especially maybe in a weaker pool. But to me, it's hard to take a player, even if he would be elite, that to me you're guaranteeing is only with the team probably 5 to 6 years. And then it's at a position, by the way, that's pretty replaceable when it comes to Robinson's production. Rashad Penny's not going to be Bijan Robinson, but he could be by 70%. So with all those reasons in mind, I still think it's going to be trenches. And Paris Johnson, I think he makes a lot of sense because he not only checks the box as an immediate starter at right guard, but he also fills the box of a long-term right tackle replacement. And he's depth up front that they want, because if Lane Johnson gets hurt this year, who's their backup tackles right now? So, and Nolan Smith is a premier pass rusher with speed, and they want depth there too. So, Gino, I really do think it's going to be trenches. Who I bet on with FanDuel will be tough because, again, I don't know which prospect and which spot, but I think this is going to be what they do, man. So I just can't wait for Thursday to find out how this board falls. It's a very unpredictable draft, as they all are, but this year especially. I think teams are all going to have completely different opinions of this prospect pool.
I want to talk about the idea of trading up for Jalen Carter real quick, because if you're sitting there and he makes it past Seattle, right? Realistically, which one of those teams would you be most threatened by between that pick after Seattle, so Detroit and Philadelphia, to take Jalen Carter?
I think it'd be Detroit.
I think Chicago, because they had big interest in signing a guy like Javon Hargrave, and they need interior depth. And it's like, do you want to buck up and help your offense? For sure. But, I mean, they need defensive help in the worst way. I mean, Detroit could be that guy, too.
It's one of the two. You know, me and you talked about it yesterday because on our predictive mock draft, we had Carter going at 6 to Detroit. It's just because I think Dan Campbell's culture, his personality, what he prioritizes on defense, the way they're building that roster, I think Carter would make a lot of sense that they'd be willing to take the risk. But, yeah, I think the Bears and Lions probably over the Raiders and Falcons, right? The Falcons signed Calais Campbell. They've invested a lot in the defense this year. The Raiders could use that, but I have no idea what Vegas is going to do.
So if he makes it past 5, you're saying, well, if he makes it past 6, rather,
he's got to make it past
we got to get above Chicago.
Yes, and then you got to get above Chicago. But if Detroit, and maybe Detroit be willing to let you trade up, but Detroit's the team that if they recognize Carter as the pick, then there's nothing you can do. But if not, then you could get up from 6 to 8. And then, yeah, I'm with you. They just got to get in front of 9. They just got to leap at least one spot. So I would love, I mean, that would be, to me, the ideal scenario that plays out on Thursday. I mean, thinking about Carter with that defensive line would be extremely exciting. But, you know, we're going to continue our predictive mock draft coming up next. We did have Jalen Carter go at 6. We traded down from 10 to 12 to select Nolan Smith, the edge rusher from Georgia. Now what are the Eagles going to do at 30? What prospects could be available? Picks 13 through 31 coming your way on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
And this episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel, not just the official sports book of the Locked On Eagles podcast and the entire Locked On Podcast Network, but it is the number one sports book in all of America. I have to drive to coach every single day, and there's a big billboard that says America's number one sports book, FanDuel. If you're not using it yet, what are you waiting for? The commercials are out there. It's baseball season, grand slams, no hitters, and double plays. We have the draft coming up. You can bet on where you think guys are going to go. That's what we do. And how do we do it? We get our phones, we go to the FanDuel app, or you go to fanduel.com/lockedon on your computer and sign up. And when you sign up, you will get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. That is a no sweat first bet. What does that mean? You put in up to $1,000. And let's say it loses, hopefully you win. Well, you're basically insured to get all of that money back in bonus bets if you don't win. And simply go to fanduel.com/lockedon to sign up, and you will get that no sweat first bet. FanDuel is an official partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network.
All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Thanks for making us your first listen. Shout out to the everydayers. Also, Locked On's NFL Mock Draft special is here, and it's bigger than ever. Follow along as all 32 teams' first pick in a 6-episode Ultimate Mock Draft experience. Only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I absolutely love what we were able to do in that mock draft for the Eagles at pick 10 and 30. Find out what we did on YouTube. Again, the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel. So, Gino, today we're going to continue with a mock draft. We did yesterday picks 1 through 12 of our first round predictive mock. We had the Eagles trading down with Houston from 10 to 12. And I think this is even more fitting now considering the Jets and Packers just swapped 13 and 15. So Houston, we had them taking Will Levis. They want to get a receiver for their quarterback of the future. They jump right in front of Green Bay and take Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. The Eagles move down saying, we're okay with Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski, Nolan Smith, Kalijah Cansey. We'll take one of those trench players. Nolan Smith falls on our lap at 12. That was the selection. We also collect a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-rounder this year to get them back into those rounds 4 through 6 where they don't have a selection. So that's what we did yesterday on the show. Today we're going to do picks 13 through 31, and we're going to alternate. And again, Gino, with this mock draft, it's what we think is going to happen, not what we would do ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes a long way to say that, because if you look at the Will Levis hype right now, I don't make that pick if I'm a GM 20 times out of 20. I just can't fathom it. And Green Bay, I think they made an excellent move yesterday, Lou. If you're looking at like a Howie Roseman type move, well, let's get rid of this quarterback. Let's jump up 2 spots, potentially make it easier for us to get JSN if he were to be there. But right now you're sitting there, you don't have JSN. What does Green Bay do? Do you want to protect your quarterback? Do you want to add to your defensive line? Do you want another pass catcher? The idea of adding a tight end, like, could that potentially happen?
Yeah, so we're going to alternate. I'm going to do Green Bay. You've got New England, New York, so on and so forth. Gino, I'm with you. I think Dalton Kincaid is good enough for the Packers to say, look, we have Christian Watson. We love the steps he took in the second half of the season last year. We have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the backfield. We want to continue to build around Jordan Love and give this kid a chance after 3 years of being on the bench, which is rare in the NFL nowadays. So, yeah, we had JSN moving up, or higher than we thought at 12, or I should say at 10. Houston moves up with Philadelphia to take JSN. So Green Bay settles for another weapon, but it is tight end 1 on the board. So I a lot of sense, as you mentioned. New England, Gino, is a tough one. They could go any direction. I mean, just look at last year, Cole Strange. The Patriots do things in a very different way. Do you have an idea of what you think Bill Belichick would do here? They're in a weird spot right now with this franchise. I don't know what their focus is.
Want to take another quarterback? Like, does he?
I was thinking Hendon Hooker, man.
Yeah. What if he does? I mean, what? You know what? We have no idea what's going to happen, Lou. Let's give him Hendon Hooker. Like, why not? That makes so much sense. He's a Senior Bowl guy. Bill loves the idea of just continuing to add at that position. And if there's a team outside of Philadelphia that has no sweat, no problem taking more quarterbacks, if that guy, who maybe he's even higher than one of the 4 that already went, is on their board at 14, Bill should take him. Why not? Let's get crazy.
And I would love that idea. Yeah, and I totally think they could. It just, the Hendon Hooker love, I know it's out there and it exists, but 25 years old, coming off a torn ACL, But that's a very Patriots pick, right? I mean,
Yes,
I thought it did make sense when they
100%.
took Mac Jones, and I think they could do it again now that, Mac is totally fallen out of favor in New England. So I think, Gino, if you didn't pick him with the Patriots, I was going to say maybe Washington, Detroit, Tampa,
Yeah,
in this
why not?
14 to 19 range. I could totally see him going off the board if those first four go inside the top 7 like we had them going. So somebody in this quarterback purgatory is going to want to take a flyer on Hendon Hooker. With the New York Jets, we know they've got their quarterback now in Aaron Rodgers. They've got some weapons for him. Allen Lazard, Garrett Wilson. You have Mecole Hardman as well. Breece Hall coming off that torn ACL. Looked really good before that as a rookie. I think they're going to want to get him some more protection, Gino. I think this is where another tackle comes off the board. I think Broderick Jones from Georgia would be the selection.
Yeah, looking at why the Jets traded back, I think they're comfortable with the idea that they can probably find an offensive lineman that they can fall in love with, right? And you have the threat of New England potentially taking one. The Cole Strange pick. They always love protecting their quarterback. But hey, you luck into that next guy up, right? After Skoronski, after Johnson, I think it's clear who that next guy is. And Jones is somebody who can develop into being that premier guy. And they have a lot of guys that haven't made it. Like, you got to replace Mekhi Becton now, potentially. Like, he's fallen out of favor there. You have to add, especially for Aaron Rodgers, who's not nimble, not fleet of foot anymore. Continue to add at that position.
All right, Gino, you've got Washington. Christian Gonzalez is still on the board. He fell past the top 15. Washington maybe needs a secondary. The quarterback I thought could be an option with Hendon Hooker, but he goes to the Patriots. Maybe some offensive line help. What are you thinking with the Commanders?
Yeah, they do just bring back Deron Payne on the interior of the defensive line. If they didn't, I think that would be a hole that they could go for.
Kalijah Kancey, maybe?
Yeah, Kalijah Kancey could definitely be one. You can make the assumption that they might go offensive line here again. I think that this will be like that first pick where you're saying, okay, that offensive lineman might have gone a little bit higher than we expected. But if Christian Gonzalez is there a guy in their secondary that warrants not being replaced right now? And
I don't think
I think it's with the threat of Pittsburgh right there, who could easily take that. And the idea of adding Joey Porter there with his dad, I mean, it makes so much sense. Christian Gonzalez, like, let's go there. It would hurt. It would just be like Kayvon Thibodeau last year with the Giants.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things.
Back-to-back years.
Yeah, Washington, they just made a sale. It's a new owner. They're going to want to do things the right way. Hopefully they get their scouting department in order. And frankly, Washington has had some of the better drafts that you and I have liked over the last couple of years. So it makes
They have. I've always liked their roster. It's just the quarterback position that they cannot get right. Gino, with the 17th pick with Pittsburgh, I just think it makes too much sense. They need secondary help. Joey Porter Jr. to the Steelers. I mean, come on.
Yeah. You can't write that any easier. How many guys or how many old Steelers fans are gonna like duct tape over their Porter jerseys and like change out the number
100%.
with a junior,
or just write down junior on the
yeah, without a doubt, they'll definitely do that.
Gino, you got Detroit here at 18. They took Jalen Carter at 6 on yesterday's show.
Yeah, and the idea of what Detroit is very puzzling to me. Like, are you a team that wants to build around Jared Goff? And if so, you got to continue to invest in that offense. But the defense was very, very, very bad. And you just lost a safety due to gambling things that were off the field. Brian Branch is sitting there. It makes a load of sense.
Pair him up
man.
with CGJ.
Yeah, pair him up with CGJ now. Like, why not go heavy there? You need another guy. I think it makes a boatload of sense.
For sure. I think it does too. When it comes to Tampa Bay, I thought maybe this is a landing spot for Hendon Hooker. Right now, Baker Mayfield's their starting quarterback. They've got a lot of holes, Gino. Maybe tight end. This could be where Mayer goes. But I would say they need trench help. And when you look at maybe Miles Murphy goes off the board here, Kalijah Kancey. But I think they need offensive line help more than defensive line. So I think this is where Darnell Wright goes from Tennessee.
Right. Like, I could have made that pick with Washington as well. I think Wright is that next guy up after Jones. You could interchange those guys. It's almost like the corner position with Deonte Banks and Joey Porter, where it's like those are the next two clearly, but how they're going to go, I don't really know. Like, what is your cup of tea, right? Do you want Banks who can run? Do you want Porter who's got the length? With Jones and Darnell Wright, I mean, pick your flavor. SEC tackles, they just work.
They do. Gino, you've got Seattle here at 20. We went with Tyree Wilson at pick 5, the Texas Tech edge rusher. So defensive tackle maybe? Kalijah Cansey still on the board. They could use offensive line help. What are you thinking here with the Seahawks?
You know what would make this very Seahawksy?
What?
They just lost Rashad Penny.
Oh, man. They
got
Walker.
Kenneth Walker. They do have Kenneth Walker, but
that would be Seattle.
It would be very Seattle-y. But let's say they make the right pick. I think Kalijah Cansey would be a great one. Our friend
with Tyree Wilson. Ooh, I would love that for the Seahawks, man.
He is big on them investing in the trenches too. And now with Desai not there, how does your defensive coordinator go forward building for that position? I mean, it should be very similar schematically, but Cansey could play in just about any scheme, in my opinion. Like, he's going to be able to rush the passer from the 3-tech position.
They have so many nice young defenders, Gino, on that defense. In the secondary, Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant. Now you had Tyree Wilson, Kalijah Cansey. My guy Darryl Taylor from Tennessee a few years ago has shown some flashes. Jordan Brooks.
Alton Robinson, brother. Cooking. That's our guy.
Yes, sir. Robinson as well. Gino, one more pick before we take a break here. The Chargers on the clock at 21. They got to get some weapons for Justin Herbert. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, they're good when they play, but they have injury histories. They're not very explosive. I think they need another wide receiver. Maybe tight end. I like Michael Mayer, but I think they're going to go with a wide receiver that's interchangeable inside and out. I like Zay Flowers from Boston College.
Yeah, right above Baltimore, who I know would love him. Our friend Kevin Allstriker over at Locked On Ravens loves the idea of Zay. You have Minnesota who could draft Zay. You never know with Jacksonville if they want to continue to build around Trevor Lawrence, taking him. The Giants could use him. He is that next guy up. I know Jordan Addison might be your more outside favorite type of player, but if you want Zay Flowers, who truly is inside, outside, not Tyreek Hill, but plays that type of role, that's your guy.
All right, everybody, we're going to continue on this predictive mock draft picks 22 through 31 coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. I mean, just look at Gino and I since 2018. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp, it connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. I've been doing therapy now for 4 years. Completely has changed the way that I go about life, for sure. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You don't have to go anywhere. The comfort of your home is where you can do BetterHelp. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I've already had a few different therapists. BetterHelp helps you find the right fit with no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today, and you're going to get 10% off your first month of online therapy. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. We thank BetterHelp for sponsoring the Locked On Eagles podcast today. All right, Eagles fans, one final mock draft wrapping up the show today on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles, a predictive first-round mock. We've got 22 through 31 left, Gino, here, so let's continue on. And you're on the clock here with the Baltimore Ravens, who Zay Flowers just went in front of them to the Chargers. Big blow. Maybe they still add another receiver for Lamar Jackson. They love to invest, though, in the defense as well.
Yeah, I think cornerback could be a big need for them right now.
They love taking the secondary man in the first round.
Yeah, if you want to compliment to Humphrey, how good is it?
And they wanted Darius Slay, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah. He was the next man up there. And if he didn't come back to Philadelphia, he was going to be a different type of bird. Yep. Deonte Banks. I think the idea of keeping the Maryland kid in Baltimore makes a lot of sense. If you look at needing a complement to what Humphrey does there, Deonte Banks can run. I mean, he's not that big physical long corner that Humphrey is, so why not have a complement? I mean, I think Deonte Banks probably is going to go higher than Joey Porter. Like, I have a good feeling about that. And yeah, it's interchangeable how you take those guys, keep the Maryland kid in Maryland.
I think Myles Murphy falling here is incredible value for the Vikings, who could use some defensive line help at pick 23, Gino. Murphy, to me, is someone I'd be comfortable taking in the top 15, so I think this is best player available at a premier spot for Minnesota. Myles Murphy, the pick edge rusher at Clemson. Maybe Doug Peterson continues to get some defensive help on the line, maybe the secondary. Gino, you got the pick with the Jaguars at 24.
Doug Peterson, loves his quarterback, loves a young quarterback, right? I think he wants to
does.
protect that quarterback. I think he would want to bulk up that interior. I think they have two good tackles there down in Jacksonville right now. Let's go to the guard position because I think there's one guy who is clearing away. I have a similar trend here. I like keeping those guys in state. I did that with the Baltimore pick. I think I did that with one more. I think the idea of Osiris Torrance going to Jacksonville makes a lot of sense with the help that they need there, with what Doug Peterson likes to do in the run game. He comes from Philadelphia where you had those athletic, run-moving type of guards. Osiris Torrance clearing away is the guy who is purely a guard. And when was that first pure guard taken over the last couple drafts? Between this 24 and 32 area. Range. So why not?
Right. All right, the Giants here at 25, Gino, I think now that they invested in Daniel Jones, which I think is a mistake, but they did it. They started helping him out with Waller and Paris Campbell, but they got to continue to add some weapons for Daniel Jones if they want to maximize who he can be. Jordan Addison here, the pick at wide receiver from USC. And then you continue on this run of weapons. I think maybe these next few picks could be some pass catchers. So I think you're going to see a run in this draft on weapons around this range. The receiver group, I don't think there's enough guys worth, multiple top 15 picks, but for this range, I think it makes sense.
Do you think Dallas could entertain taking wide receiver this early?
They traded for Brandon Cooks. I don't know. How do they feel about Michael Gallup still in that offense? Yeah, maybe. I mean, Dallas could go with Jerry Jones. You really never know.
Bijan Robinson makes so much sense for them to take. Like if he's there, like I'm going to draft the best guy from like another one. I'm keeping him in state, but
yeah,
I mean, it's Jerry Jones, like the brightest bell of the ball at that pick. It's such a Cowboys pick. And yeah, it would stink, but hey, they got through the Ezekiel Elliott era. You draft to beat your team, to beat the teams in the division. The Eagles will continue to bulk up the trenches if that happens. And here's your Bills pick. Go and make it for the city of Buffalo.
Yeah, for the Bills at 27, this would be unfortunate for them that no receiver falls outside of Quentin Johnson, who I don't love, and I don't think he'd be the right fit for Buffalo. They got to finally draft
Gabe Davis.
It's the same player. What I'm saying. Exactly. So they've got to draft, to me, some more protection for Josh Allen. They do not invest a lot of top picks in offensive linemen. Take one this year, tackle from Oklahoma, Anton Harrison. Got to invest in the trenches for Josh. You got the pick here at the Bengals spot, 28th overall. Ooh, Michael Mayer, man. That would be dangerous.
What was his name, though? I think Michael Mayer, like the next man up in the tight end group. I think these tight ends, wherever they do fall, are going to have a very good time because you go down and like Musgrave is going to go to some team that just needs a pass-catching tight end to add to their repertoire. And, he falls there. Like, what if the Eagles took him at 30? Like, what if they took Musgrave at 30 or one of those guys like that? Absolutely could happen. Bengals need one. You need to continue to find a way to protect Burrow. I believe in getting that sixth offensive lineman who also can go and catch is never a bad pick in the National Football League.
No, I agree with you for sure. The Saints here on the clock at 29. I think it's really good value at this point to take Lucas Van Ness, who some are saying won't get past the Eagles at 10. Van Ness, a player that can play both inside and out. I'm not sure where he fits long-term, but the Saints now got Derek Carr on offense. They re-signed Michael Thomas. They got Chris Olave. Continue to build that defense, which has gotten them through some years over the past few seasons without top-tier quarterback play. I think they take Lucas Van Ness, who wouldn't interest the Eagles, I think, here at 30, Gino, anyway, since we took Nolan Smith at 12. But now we're on the clock at 30. What are we thinking for Philadelphia? We went edge rusher, maybe offensive line. Are we thinking corner, safety? Where's your head at with the Birds pick?
So, yeah, Emmanuel Forbes is obviously the next man up there as well. Safety, I think there's a very big drop-off.
There's a big drop-off.
Are you willing to take the next guy up there on the offensive line? I think
Cody Mauch would be, I think, interesting too, Gino.
I think Mauch is that guy that like gets into the first round and we're saying, probably should have seen that coming. Like a versatile guy who could play all positions on the offensive line and has been hyped up by the Senior Bowl to no end.
Right.
But tight end at 30, Lou, like Darnell Washington going back-to-back Georgia guys, man. Like, does that idea entertain you as much as it makes me
entertains
happy?
Me for sure. I just don't know if they would do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I mean, Maisie Smith, like, do you go interior and exterior, the defensive line? You have a big hole there. Like, do they make the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, which some people believe they would take?
I like it better here than Bijan at 10 for sure.
Yeah.
You know? I think that makes sense.
Should we do it? Should we please the people and give them a running back with our final selection in mock draft season? Should we give them Jahmyr Gibbs?
Should we pander?
Should we pander one time on this show?
I don't know, man. I can't see them do that overtaking.
I think this is a very good exercise of what happens though right here. Like, this is prime. We're getting out of the first round territory. Like, we're moving back 5 to 6 spots. We'll make our selection early on Friday night. I don't want anything to do with forcing a 5th-year option for any of these guys, in my opinion. Will McDonald, if you didn't take Nolan Smith, I could see. I just don't know. I don't know.
Gino, I think, in my opinion, they would go offensive line. I think they really want to make sure they have depth. They want another option maybe at right guard. They want another long-term replacement for Lane Johnson. So I don't know if that's Dawan Jones. I think Jeff Stoutland would really like Mock. I don't know if I'm too set on him because he's my guy, but I don't know. I think they're going to go meat and potatoes, man. I think they're going trenches.
North Dakota State, baby. Let's run.
I think they're going to do it. I really would love that versatility, and all the boxes the Eagles need now. We mentioned Paris Johnson in segment 1B guard right now. He could back up tackle. He could be a potential long-term replacement. So, yeah, that's the select. How do you think fans would feel about that? Nolan Smith and Cody Mock is the 2 picks. I think
probably
they would be like,
happy.
Yeah, this is what we do,
Yeah. I'll tell you this.
Right.
Back in 2015 when Marcus Smith was selected, right? My roommate, who is a Washington fan, looks at me. He goes, "What position would you hate if the Eagles took?" I said linebacker. I think linebacker would be a huge mistake. Up on the screen comes linebacker out of Louisville, Marcus Smith. I think that would be a very similar reaction to most of our fans if that second pick's like offensive lineman out of North Dakota State, Cody Mock. But you have to realize
I've learned to accept
this is Howie Roseman. You have to accept it for what it is. This is what he does, man. It's like driving on the right side of the road in the United States, the sun coming up in the east. It's just some things work the way that they do. And Howie Roseman drafting interior or any position on the offensive and defensive line. Versatile players, guys that can play inside and play out. That's one thing you could take to the bank. If Howie Roseman is making a top 10 selection, especially, but any pick in the first round, that player isn't going to be a one-trick pony. They're not good. Well, outside of Jalen Reagor, who's just a speed receiver, now his paradigm has changed to say, we got to get a guy who can do multiple things. Devontae Smith can do multiple things. And you look at your pick, Jordan Davis can do multiple things for you. That's what you have to continue to do. And with Nolan Smith, with Cody Mock, those guys can do multiple things and be instant impact players for you.
I agree. And then I think maybe you focus on defensive back, running back, weapons on day 2 at that 2nd and 3rd round selection. Nolan Smith and Cody Mock the picks. I would be happy with that. And I think Eagles fans are slowly starting to accept that this is the reality for the Eagles in the draft, and it normally works, so you just got to trust it. Do you know, with this final pick with Kansas City, Quentin Johnson, I think, makes a lot of sense, right, at receiver?
Yeah, they need one. I mean, you lose Juju, you need another guy to add there. Why not? I think Quentin Johnson will have a great career if he goes to Kansas City, man. Like, ignore the drops. It doesn't matter when Mahomes is putting them in a bucket for you.
Exactly. All right, Gino, that's our final mock draft of the 2023 offseason. Now it's time to find out what really happens. Thursday night will be live throughout the first round. We also, though, we have got one more show for you to help get you ready for the 2023 NFL Draft on tomorrow's podcast. Make sure you subscribe on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers. Make sure you also follow us on Twitter. Always talking birds throughout the day. What'd you think of that predictive mock? What do you think's going to happen? Let us know at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go, Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.